And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and we have Tim Alexander and Matthew DEAGLE here. Matthew was on, of course, last hour, and we've been doing a really good analysis of what is driving events behind here. Tim, yesterday I took your blog and I actually posted up two different videos on YouTube and also on our live stream channel on what the insanity, what's going on. Of course, MoveOn.org and Black Lives Matter is behind it, tied directly to Hillary Clinton and to George Soros. So what's your latest analysis of what's going on? Because I took your blog as a template and some of the videos and posted up these YouTubes. I'm very appalled by the fact that we tolerate this, calling it free speech, when we have a black man who was about to launch his restaurant, which you have on your blog from yesterday, who was shot dead in Chicago because he supported Trump. Here he was,
he was shot dead by these characters, and yet the mainstream media has ignored that death. They also
of course they ignore it because they don't want to face the fact that there are a bunch of
MoveOn guys was in the street with a submachine gun firing it.
Right. The fact is that the media are so corrupt and so evil, they're committing, by the way, suicide, because most people don't get their news from the media anymore. They get it from the internet, they get it from shows like this, and as a result, they're sick and tired of the lies, the same way as the people are sick and tired of Washington, D.C., and the career criminal politicians who basically just filling their pockets while destroying the culture and society.
Yeah, yep. And America's going down the drain more and more all the time. The American middle class is somewhere between dead and dying. Right. And that has really woken the American people up. It's sadly to say the majority haven't woken up because of a wide variety of reasons they should wake up. They're waking up because it's really, really hurting their pocketbook, and they see that their version of the American dream has gone bye-bye, and unless they turn things around, it's not coming back. In fact, it's going to get a lot worse.
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about the other day with Bill Salas about the destruction of America, unless we have this turnaround, the only one I see actually working on turning it around is Donald Trump. I know some people think that Bernie Sanders can. Bernie's a communist. They even had, by the way, at these things in Ohio, they actually had communist signs there. People need to understand communism in its more vile form from Russia.
Well, I mean,
we want to go
that's because Marxists are behind all those.
They managed to kill somewhere between 80 and 100 million people in the former Russian Empire, and what that became the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR. I have to tell you, as monstrous as Adolf Hitler was, he didn't make a dent towards 80 or 100 million. But Joe Stalin and his fellow compatriots killed just an insane number of people.
Well, supposedly the Einsatzgruppen,
Christian priests or preachers, and they just said they killed people, the intelligentsia, and they just killed a lot of people at random to spark absolute terror and fear and obedience to their KGB and its predecessor organizations, NKVD and DECA.
I took care of people that survived, actually, the slaughter in Ukraine. Matthew, you had a comment there about this situation because of what we talked about last
Yeah. Can you hear me, right?
Very well. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so basically, I mean, the whole story about Hitler and the Nazis being the greatest evil, it's basically lies. I mean, the Nazis were bad in some respects, but a lot of their worst ideas, like euthanasia, are still widely believed in Europe. You can go to a doctor in Belgium now and have a doctor kill you if you are depressed, for example. The Nazis similarly believed in putting people out of their misery, like a dog or something being put to sleep. And that accounts for the vast majority of so-called victims of the Holocaust, or people who were already dying of starvation or disease, who were then euthanized by I guess they call themselves humane Germans. On the other hand, the Soviets, I mean, Stalin starved millions of Ukrainians just because by taking away the fruits of their own labor and storing it in grain silos so they couldn't get a hold of it. Not to mention the Poles, right? Supposedly the Einsatzgruppen, the German Einsatzgruppen, killed all the Polish intelligentsia. But that is a complete myth, because how else is it that right after World War II, all these same Marxist intelligentsia were able to establish a communist regime almost instantly, and they went on then to kill 5 million Poles themselves. I just don't believe it. I think, however, I don't think that there's a Jewish conspiracy to create this myth about the Nazis. I think that the Jews are just they just believe in it because they're the subjects of it. I think that it's a Marxist piece of propaganda to demonize National Socialism, because National Socialism, the Nazis' ideology, is socialism which is not Marxist. It's a competitor for Marxism. It solves economic problems while not eradicating culture. And therefore, it's their biggest boogeyman, and they call it fascism, right? That's their code word for nationalism.
I think that would be an example of Sweden, which is that form of socialism you're talking about that doesn't destroy culture.
Well, I don't know, but I don't think Bernie Sanders himself is a communist per se. I think Bernie Sanders is a socialist. I don't think he's necessarily comparable to National Socialism.
No, I don't believe that he believes it.
He has virtually no nationalist sentiments. Neither does Sweden. Sweden is a self-destructively non-nationalist country. So I would say Sanders is influenced by Marxism, but on the other hand, either Sanders or Trump is better than Hillary or Ted Cruz, because Sanders will at least placate the masses somewhat by providing them some kind of economic fairness. I mean, the notion that this is a battle between capitalism and communism is completely
you have
let him finish out, Tim. Tim, let him finish. Tim, stop. Tim, stop for a second. Let him finish. Tim, let him finish his statement first.
Yeah, basically, I mean, the whole dichotomy of communism versus capitalism is a big myth. The USA, since the 1960s, has been the main promulgator of cultural Marxism, right? There's two kinds of Marxism, two different approaches. You might consider them to be masculine and feminine. Basically, Karl Marx believed that the source of unfairness and disgruntlement in society is some kind of tradition of some kind. Whether it's capitalism, the economic tradition, or whether it's traditional society and culture and national boundaries. Now, the European Union and the USA, the CIA at least, believe essentially in cultural Marxism, the belief that the main cause of wars is national boundaries, and therefore they have to take over everything and destroy all cultures. Since the 1960s, what the so-called Americanization of the world isn't really the spreading of American culture. We aren't going over there and playing bluegrass or something. We're basically spreading Marxist, degenerate, materialist culture in order to incite anarchy, because the anarchy then gives an excuse to bring in totalitarianism. That's what the Marxists have been trying to do all along, and I think that the Marxists control our CIA. The notion that the USA versus the Soviet Union is some kind of battle between communism and capitalism, I think, is false. It's actually, at least since the 60s, it has been a battle between two different forms of Marxism. And Marxism in general is a fanatical ideology that seeks to erase traditions, just like ISIS going around smashing.
That's why there's a dark alliance between them, yeah. So, Tim, your comments, go ahead.
Well, I would have to say that what we just heard ignores the role of the global banking cartel.
No, it's tied directly to the global banking cartel.
No, I don't ignore it. In fact, I think the founders of the multiculturalist and Marxist movement are undoubtedly certain wealthy bankers and aristocrats like the Rothschilds.
Yeah, there's a link there.
Yeah, and they funded both Hitler's rise and they certainly funded the communists. And
yeah, but they didn't support Hitler. They wanted to
Adolf Hitler was 1/4 Rothschild. His grandmother worked in the Rothschild palace in Vienna and got pregnant.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, Hitler was certainly probably part Jewish, but I don't know about a Rothschild. Hitler was... I mean, the main thing you have to realize is Hitler started out basically being hardcore anti-Marxist, and he was infiltrated by a group called the Thule Society. So Rudolf Hess, his second in command, is the one who introduced a lot of the things we know them for, like the racialism and so forth. They were supposedly an anti-Marxist and anti-Jewish organization. But in reality, the person who introduced Hitler to the Thule Society was himself a descendant of an Orthodox rabbi.
Interesting.
It's controlled opposition, Emmanuel Goldstein.
Yeah, well, they definitely funded both sides, the bankers did. And that's what's going on right now, too, the same deal. Back in a moment. Where? Oh, there we are. So, gentlemen, here's my kind of summary, and I want to get back to both Matt and to Tim. We'll try to get Professor McCanny on perhaps tomorrow afternoon. Right. right.
legislative and judicial. But we're the real three governments, period, right? That's just the presidential government. That's the White House, you might say, and Congress. We have the Pentagon as another form of government, the military, right? But we also have probably the most powerful form of government is the CIA/NSA, the intelligence network, which for a long time now, I've been observing them, they appear to be infiltrated heavily by academic Marxists and to having Marxist agenda, which they are disguising as the Americanization of the world. They're using basically a capitalist excuse to spread Marxism and anarchy throughout the world.
Well, the CIA, for example, just to summarize here, I need to make this comment. The CIA, the Department of Justice, and the FBI bring in the illegal drugs. That's why when Trump thinks of putting this wall up, all it'll do is stop poor people coming in here, which, by the way, we can't tolerate 100 million poor people arriving here on their doorsteps expecting us to save them. If anything, we need to help them in their own home country, which they prefer. But the idea of a wall is not going to stop the drugs. It'll stop some coming directly through Mexico, like cocaine, but it's not going to stop heroin, which the U.S. government is flying in Hercules C-130s, etc.
Well, I mean, you want to know what the horrible truth is, that quite honestly, the bad guys won World War II. We were the bad guys. Franklin D. Roosevelt was not a good guy. The New Deal basically put all the power and control of the economy in the hands of the Federal Reserve and bankers. And, of course, it's gotten even worse under Obama. But on top of that, I mean, can you really say that the war crimes of the USA in World War II were any better than the war crimes committed by the Germans? Stalin as well. I mean, you already mentioned Stalin and the massive numbers of people that died under his regime. But then again, we're also the only country in history to have used nuclear weapons on civilians. And it was totally unnecessary and was actually authorized by Roosevelt when he first created the Manhattan Project. He actually personally authorized, it was released a couple of years ago under the National Security Act, he personally authorized the use of those weapons for experimental purposes, basically just to see what would happen. That's why we flew in so many doctors immediately after, because we wanted to see the effects of radiation poisoning. Boy,
exactly.
did we see it. We watched people with their skin melting off and all their organs failing from cancer, dying in excruciating agony.
Isn't that evil? And
meanwhile, the supposedly
just
the most
like I took care, by the way, of atomic soldiers that survived World War II and atomic tests at above ground in Arizona.
I mean, it's all BS. This country's been controlled by some dangerous people for a long time now. And
well, Matt, I want to make an important comment here. I was talking about Tier 1 science. We talked about this with Professor McCanney. What do you think they do with that $2 trillion they get from the illegal drug trade, which is not under presidential or congressional or Senate supervision? Yeah, or these committees? No. This is, as you say, a different branch. For example, underground cities built by Bechtel Corporation are under the control of the NSA and CIA and these secret agencies. They're also integrated with other secret agencies of other countries around the world. But you're right. We have world government not by, in a sense, through the secret agencies tied directly to the world bankers. It is a proxy world government by secret agencies is what's really going on, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't even have our own government. We're really controlled. The whole world is manipulated by
it's called the dark
Babylon, the CIA.
Right, yeah, and that dark state, by the way, is something people don't want. They think if they elect the right politician, Trump is going to have a lot of house cleaning to do. For example, the first thing to stop the drugs in New Hampshire isn't just building a wall, which will stop illegals and some drugs like cocaine coming in, and a lot of poor people and terrorists coming in their OTM other than Mexicans. That'll help. But the real issue is that if you want to stop the drugs in New Hampshire, which is heroin, you have to stop the illegal drug trade by the CIA, FBI, and Department of Justice, which set up Fast and Furious, that personally gave guns to our cartels that were allied with us, bringing in billions of dollars worth of drugs into this country.
Yeah, and follow the money, because it's the big banks in New York that are handling the money and making their cut off of it.
And by the way, those things, they could pass banking laws making that illegal to handle the money from major cartel people, but we don't. And the reason is because it's actually legal to launder the drug money, which is going directly into the hands of CIA, NSA, etc., and going off to corporations like Bechtel to build underground cities and build high-speed underground maglev rails.
Well, that's the military-industrial complex, but I mean, as I said, it gets even worse when you think about the active undermining and destruction of all traditional cultures and languages by the CIA. In Germany, for example, they have an official policy of gradually destroying and phasing out the German language and replacing it with English. So at the same time, they want to replace all traditional music with this garbage pop music that they produce. And as I said, they have that's the main cause of the degeneration in black communities.
Are you saying that the policy of the CIA is to remove German from Germany and just have English as the main language?
Yes, they've been actively promoting the English language and phasing out German. They're behind. I mean, the CIA controls Germany, right? They've controlled Germany since World War II.
We'll see that even with Angela Merkel's phones even being.
Merkel is a CIA.
Well, we actually have an occupation army that never left, and it's been 70 years now.
Right. The other thing that's a really important comment that people should understand is by bringing in these illegals, they're going to create Fortress Europe, which will be basically one superstate where national borders are gone. And that's where I see this happening fairly quickly as a response to people being so angry with what's happened. They're going to swing to the opposite side to go very far right. And we're going to see the rise, like it says in the Bible, of the superstate of Fortress Europe. And by the way, a clenched fist of Europe with all its technology and so on is going to be a formidable power that will be greater than the United States or Russia.
You want to know something else, though, is this controversy about immigration. It's interesting they focus so much on racism against Hispanics because actually one of the big concerns is that Hispanics come here from Latin America and end up being essentially indentured servants, making less than minimum wage. For instance, just 2 months ago, there was a case in Chicago where Chinese gangsters were running an organization that was hiring Mexicans in various restaurants for $3.50 an hour and lodging them in crowded and squalid conditions in apartment complexes with 5 to a single one-room apartment.
Wow.
That's the real concern here, is that these people who are coming over illegally are being treated like third world citizens.
We see, this is why I've said our main thing is we do need a wall, but we also need to have bottled water and air-conditioned buses to bring workers so they don't die trying to cross the desert.
Yeah, I mean, there should be some
Look, guys, it worked really good for many years. We had people coming in to pick crops, and they were housed, and they came in on special visas, and it worked just great for many years.
We got to make sure they get paid.
All of a sudden, we allowed it to. We allowed the border to become wide open, and
Clinton and Fox.
If you
and all
step
those guys.
way back from this, and you will see that what is happening is a deliberate policy to destroy Europe and to destroy the pan-European countries, which I identify as the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. These countries are the people are the most best educated, most aggressive in terms of warfare, or high technology, everything, and they want to destroy us so they can have a total grip on the entire world. And in the process of destroying us in the Third World War, they want to reduce the population quite dramatically to eradicate what Kissinger calls
the unnecessary Tim. What people need to understand is that the primary force behind this isn't even world governments or national governments. It's these secret agencies. They're the driver, and they're tied directly to the bankers.
I mean, it's basically Marxism, right? Because Marxists believe that all borders and national identities.
Well, that's true, but I'm saying that's why these academics and so on within it.
Marxism is a failed system. It's not Marxism.
Well, it's definitely Marxism. There's no doubt about it. You look at the academics who are behind it.
Well, if you go to any university, Tim, you know this says, if you go to any university, they have to kiss the butt of the professor by repeating basically their doctrine, which is extreme. And welcome back. Tim, let's go over some of the interesting news that you posted up. I think tomorrow is going to be a major fulcrum day. And I think that there's enough information coming out from alternative and other media to show that Hillary Clinton and MoveOn.org and Black Lives Matter are tied directly to this cultural earthquake that's about to happen. If they try to create a GFK moment and kill Trump, I think Trump needs to up his game in terms of having, as we talked about this last week, Kevlar, a shield between him and the public, have only public on one side, have a means of escape, have his own private security.
Not Kevlar, you can't see through Kevlar.
I'm talking about plexiglass, a plexiglass bulletproof shield. You have to have a system set up so we've got higher security, because these guys, the Secret Service did a sloppy job.
They had the audience on 4 sides of him, and they were 10 foot away from the stage.
That's not reasonable.
That's not a good script for safety.
First off, you have to do this like a presidential address rather than this idea of like a town hall meeting where everybody's nice. No, when you have Black Lives Matters and MoveOn.org with a guy with a knife that actually grabs Trump by the leg, and by the way, Trump had a gun on his person and a level 3 body armor on, so this dumb idiot was about to get shot in the head or body by Trump because Trump would have killed him.
Well, he said he wanted to be a
stab him in
martyr.
the leg. Trump would have pulled out his weapon, despite the security force, and he would blow that guy away.
He said he wanted to be a martyr on his Twitter.
Well, he was about to be. He was around seconds away.
By the way, he was released in less than 24 hours. Same day. He was
$300 bond.
CNN gave him airtime.
Now, why did CNN get airtime and the guy's released?
That picture.
Well, the reason is the CNN and all his media are sickening, and I want people to know this.
It's because they hate Trump because he's a nationalist. That's all it is. That's all there is to it. Because look, the Marxists are against all cultures, any traditional culture, not just Western, but any culture. They want to bring to its knees and create total anarchy out of it.
Well, look at Trump's wife. She's a CFR member, and Trump is directly. Cruz.
Not Trump.
Cruz's wife is a CFR member. She's on leave, and also a Morgan Stanley kind of banker. So what we're dealing with here is a situation where, remember now, CFR in 1973 published that they wanted to have 10 zones for the world, just like the Bible says, 10 kings for 1 hour. And
we already have the seven-headed beast, right? This group of seven. They kicked Russia out of the group of 8. Now they have the group of 7. So we already have that. Just happened.
And we have the 10 zones, which are literally Zone 3 is Canada, the United States, Mexico. They're well on their way to pushing NAFTA, which they put through.
Remember, Vicente Fox was all angry at Trump because he was planning on reversing his Pan-American policy.
And by the way, the NAFTA destroyed Mexico. Well, I've heard from Mexicans and some of them fairly high-level business that the NAFTA agreement is one of the reasons why a lot of Mexicans had to come to America, because it destroyed their business in Mexico. So it wasn't good for them either. But what it's doing is it's trying to homogenize North America, so Canada, the United States,
they don't want it to be good. They want to create anarchy. That's the goal, is to destroy culture and create anarchy. In fact, that's what's been going on with blacks in this country for the past 50 or so years. They've been intentionally destroying African-American culture with terrible music and gangs and drugs in order to experiment with creating a rowdy, revolutionary movement.
One at a time, gentlemen. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. I know, Tim, you can finish in a second.
Yeah, they've been trying to make it, because basically blacks in this country are part of British culture, since most of their African culture was erased.
Right, but they had a strong Christian background, too. There were strong families 70, 80 years ago. The strongest families in America
there still are some, but I mean, they're plagued by the thugs in their own society. I mean, most of the black shootings are on other blacks. Just last week, as I said, a family of people, blacks were having a barbecue in Pittsburgh, and then along come 2 gangsters, and for unknown reasons, there isn't even a known motive, they shot the entire family and killed them. Even as they were trying to flee onto the porch, they were shot dead. Just last November, a black guy lured a 9-year-old boy, the brother of another gangster, into an alley and blew his head off. So this kind of, I mean, blacks' problem is, yes, there is a problem of police brutality and maybe a problem of racism and paranoia about blacks, but the main problem in black society is the culture is totally degenerate now, and that is because of the active infiltration by Marxists.
100%. One of my best friends is a black woman who is an editor at one of the alternative publications, and we talk about this. And she lives in the ghetto, and she says she hears them. She calls them they're shooting at mosquitoes, and she frequently hears gunfire. And we've talked about the fact that, and she was kind of surprised I got this, being Lily White, but that blacks were very conservative. They were very family orientated, and that's been turned upside down. Now you have 80% of blacks are born out of wedlock, and that is a script for absolute destruction.
And what you have Marxists telling them that they're the ultimate victims, and that they have to revolt against all Western culture, which is their enemy and their oppressor. That's what they're being used for. Black Lives Matter might have started out.
They do that. They do that to the Jewish people. They tell them that they give them this victim culture, and they're simply using them just as they're using the blacks to create chaos and evil for their own wicked ends.
Oh yeah, they use America for this as well. Obviously, look at the.
Course.
I mean, everything's just basically these people manipulating our society and manipulating people's self-pity. But
what really galls them about Trump? What galls them more than anything? He won't take their money.
Right.
That's probably one of them. Although I think the biggest thing they hate about him, though, at least the media, is his nationalist tendencies, because they believe nationalism is the cause of all our problems, and that we have to have a single government control everything with no.
But you know what? I'm getting old. I'm 65. but I remember the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Unfortunately, a lot of people 30 and younger today don't have a personal experience of America being an industrial powerhouse, the greatest industrial powerhouse on earth. I do. I remember all the factories. Now in my home city of Evansville, Indiana, you can count any significant factories on one hand. Used to be we had dozens and dozens.
Well, I was born in Detroit.
Where are those people working today? You can only get so many jobs at Wally World and Mickey D's and so forth. And with Obamacare, the low-paying 40-hour-a-week jobs are gone, because as soon as you hit 30 hours a week, the employer has to pay your ridiculous Obamacare charges. So, I mean, it is a death by 1,000 cuts of America and the West.
And then we talk about, Sanders wanting to pay for education. Well, I mean, the big problem is that education is so overpriced in this country because the universities are almost a racket. They give out loans with massive usurious interest on them, and then they also charge exorbitant prices for their so-called services, while they also use that money to spread propaganda all over the place. It's the universities that are the main center of this Marxist agitation.
Well, yeah, to a large extent. I mean, a simple textbook is usually $150. The medical type textbooks for nurses and so forth, which have a lot of color photos in them, and you're talking $300, $400, $500 a textbook. And it's not uncommon for a professor to say, there's 3 or 4 or 5 textbooks required for the class, and it's ludicrous. And these kids are beginning to wake up because the bankers got them to pass a law saying that you can't declare bankruptcy to get out of your student debt. So these poor kids are graduating. They've got $20,000, $30,000 or more $1,000 in debt. They can't get a job except at McDonald's or someplace. They're hounded by bill collectors, and now in one state they've already actually started to arrest people for not paying their debtors' prisons. It's ludicrous, and
meanwhile the interest is compounding like 8% per month or whatever
with mom and dad.
Well, I think that if President Trump doesn't get the office, and here's an example, for those people who want to go to Bernie Sanders, you're a fool, because his version of socialism has no way to pay for the things he wants to offer. And
if you wanted to have realistic socialism, it's pretty simple. Just have a reverse income tax. Anybody below a certain wage bracket would just get some money back from the government instead of having to pay an income tax.
Right.
But we don't want to do that, because that would mean we'd have less money for our social programs and whatever other budget we have.
But the thing is, our social programs,
jobs and let people work for it.
Well, you can do that. Articles here, and Salon is always attacking Trump. This is a lateral attack. It says Hillary will never survive the Trump onslaught. It's not fair, but it makes her a weak nominee. Come on now. They don't want somebody to ask tough questions. Hillary Clinton has a long line of bodies behind her. And one of the latest bodies they tried to do is they tried to see if they could do a JFK moment and kill Trump in Ohio with this moron that tried to attack him with a knife in his hand. Now, I'm going to tell you, people, if Trump is either dismissed because the Republican Party tries to destroy him, or they do a JFK moment and assassinate him, the population of America is going to go nuts. If you think we're going to take the sitting down, you out there, including you media and you globalists and you CIA, you're delusional. You're delusional.
Well, unfortunately, what's been prophesied and what might actually take place is a breakdown of this country. I mean, as I said, the real government and the power that wants to maintain itself doesn't even depend on the existence of the federal government anymore. The NSA and CIA...
separate. The NSA, CIA, and these secret agencies, and by the way, they're linked with all other agencies on the planet. They're the ones that control the world government, and they're tied directly to the banks and these people that are destroying national boundaries. And that's why they want to destroy them.
They might even benefit from a system where we're divided and conquered.
That's what they want. They want to have chaos in this country. They want to have racial war. What do you think Obama, his primary things he wanted to do is call class war, racial war, and destroy our borders. In fact, he's told our border guards, if you don't like doing the job the way I tell you to do it, which is don't do your job, get another job. So Obama is completely...
Throughout a lot of this country, we're going to lose our freedoms, whether it's in the Northwest and the Pacific Coast with Marxists taking over, or with people, wannabe theocrats like Ted Cruz taking over in other parts. You got to worry about where you are, because only a few places I can imagine might be preserved from this. Places that already have
but the feds
attitude.
insist on universal jurisdiction within the United States, and they insist that federal rules and regulations trump all state rules, laws, and regulations. And they'll go anywhere and do anything. We've got to. This is why Trump is so important. This is why. Really, the ultimate reason to hate him so much is he can throw a monkey wrench into the whole kit and caboodle. And
he will.
They absolutely have to have somebody in there that will do what they say and doesn't even think about
I'm telling people that what we're saying, and again, the reverse speech with David John Oates, he's also on you're over on Rents Network, right, Matthew, from 12 to 1, and you do your show. You have a number of products that are available, and we talked about those an hour or two, and services you can provide to people. Geopolitically, when you look at symbology and the astrological and other signs that are going on here, and this is biblical astrology, by the way, I want people to understand, what do you see coming this year? Because I see an extremely dangerous year, a year where terrorism is likely to happen because Obama's let all these OTMs, terrorists come in, other than Mexicans. Well, we have a year where we have incredible controversy in the election cycle, and they actually have people threaten, say, all the other members of the Republican candidacy saying that it's Trump's speech that are actually engendering this violence. How ridiculous. Do you think Trump wants somebody to grab his leg and stab him?
First of all, already we see the fulfillment of some of the prophecies in Revelation. Like the U.S., the globalist, internationalist corporations in the U.S. and their ties to the CIA is the best manifestation of the whore of Babylon ever to exist. It is literally a harlot that just prostitutes itself to anybody with no loyalty for something in exchange, deceives people with false love, and then absorbs them into its tentacles. It is, as I said, the USA has been hijacked by somebody, especially the CIA, with the intention of creating some kind of global monstrosity of government that destroys all boundaries.
You know how I describe it? The British Empire was the arms of the monster until the First World War and the Second World War virtually broke Britain and ended the empire. And the United States then picked up the mantle. But it wasn't for the good of the American people. It was for the good of the puppet masters sitting in the shadows pulling the strings.
Yeah, well, you even look at what's called Americanization around the world, which is complained about by a lot of traditional cultures. It's not even American culture. You can't say that it came from any particular place in America, except for maybe Hollywood and California music producers. It's all artificial pop culture that's made by these agents, or whatever they are, of Marxism, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think it's Marxism, intentionally trying to destroy our culture and other cultures. Already our youth have all been basically detached from the culture.
I have friends that are gay, but I don't agree with this drive towards a priest was telling me, a fellow priest, these are Orthodox priests, so they're married and have families. And this priest was in a different community, and in his community they just adopted a sex education book that talks about 24 different genders. What?
Well, I mean, that's part of Marxism as well. I mean, remember, they always take advantage of any oppressed class in order to make them as self-pitying and revolutionary and opposed to the traditional culture as possible.
Right, exactly.
I don't really care if gays want to have a marriage license or whatever, so long as they're monogamous and not promiscuous and spreading AIDS or whatever. But
I care whether children are attacked, and I don't like a perverted culture being crammed down everybody's throat for reasons.
Absolutely, I think it shouldn't be pushed in school. What's happening in countries like Canada, and you have to understand this. By the way, there's an interesting.
You got to be careful though that you don't fulfill what they want, right? That you don't actually fulfill the prophecy of them being oppressed, because the more that they feel oppressed, the more they feel motivated to attack our culture.
It's not an oppression. It's a matter of that. For example, they attack the Defense of Marriage Act, which is a man, woman, and children. If you don't, and you have the age of new genetic engineering, you can create a child from genetic engineering artificially in an animal.
Well, I mean, I think in the Bible, the condemnation of like Sodom and Gomorrah isn't so much about what we call gays today as it is about things like arranged marriage, which is actually...
No, here's the point I'm saying. If you destroy the typical biological way of having children, you're going to destroy the ability of connectedness of human beings to the greater family of humanity, and the state will be their mother and father, and they'll be born of 32 parents because of genetic engineering.
it just isn't a big issue. I mean,
it's a very big issue.
Like that
it's not just Matt. Just stop. It's not just a minor issue. It's the only issue. If, for example, we're on the cusp right now. Last year in Britain, they announced in the fall that they can create a child from 32 different parents with genetic engineering and the CRISPR protocol. This is not a side issue. This is the only issue.
No, I'm talking about gays, right? Like,
gays always lead to this, okay? Because in Israel, 12 years ago, they had a meeting in Haifa where the rabbis met and said, hey, once the technology becomes available, you can create a clone of yourself and pass your life resources to this next clone. Now, they also are working with 2 years ago, Obama funded this giant project so they can start downloading people's consciousness.
Is, like, you just have to ask yourself whether it is compatible with nature and evolution or not.
It's not compatible, and the problem is
in the case of creating like super soldiers that are viable,
it's not compatible because it's not God's way.
Right. Well, the problem is as soon as you disconnect human beings,
Lucifer in the background wanting to be God, but he's not God, and he'll never be God.
Right. The problem is this. Let me finish my statement. The problem is if you disconnect human beings from the family of mankind where their parents are real people and not a machine or a laboratory or a government, you now are going to create a state where basically
the main problem is that you're getting rid of...
Let me finish. Wild reproduction is outlawed. Wild reproduction is outlawed, and genetically engineering even transhumans. Now they're talking about the idea of humanizing animals. So your cat will talk to you, or your dog will understand English and speak back to you. People say this is impossible. Not anymore.
That would require putting a human brain in it, which would mean it'd have to be a hybrid between a human.
No, yeah, that's right, exactly. The point is they can do that now, and the problem is that you're not just this is a crawling monstrosity. This idea of 24 different genders, etc. Because what you're talking about is not a matter of suppression. You're talking about the fact that
like I said,
they're suppressing. Let me finish. They're suppressing the normal human family. Because they say it's obscene for you to say that
any kind of tradition or family.
Right, so they're against the idea of a normal human family, so they want to say it's obscene for us to say that we are the only, quote, family. We are. And when you have a man and a man or woman and woman that try to call it a marriage, it's not a marriage. Marriage is actually a religious thing. They can have a civil union, they can share their resources, their finance, and their insurance. That's perfectly fine, but to force it down the throats of children in school...
Like, honestly, I just don't care about it. I think it's such a stupid issue that we shouldn't...
It's not a stupid issue. It is the only issue because it leads to genetic engineering. It leads to genetic engineering. It leads to the end of the human race.
We should focus on genetic engineering. I mean,
no, it all leads together.
Bullshit from these
10 years from now,
ultimately, it's just yet another of their incessant attacks.
10 years from now, when they can actually genetically engineer a clone of either people in a homosexual union, and that clone is born in a laboratory, it'll be a different story because that's where we're going. Okay, that's where we're going.
That's not God's way, for sure.
That's not God's way. That'll destroy the family. It'll destroy humanity. It'll destroy the connectedness of the human race. And you'll see transhumans arrive on the scene. It'll look like Star Wars with all these monstrosities. That's what'll happen.